what do you actually do best? How do you solve problems? But I'll give you an example of what I mean. So if I am somebody who is not super high attention to detail, like I'm not somebody who's going to read, a 45-page document and be able to see every last detail of everything that's wrong with, then I might want to hire somebody to read contracts for me, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing. And it sounds so simple on some level, but it's not as easy as it sounds to really know yourself.
Hello. Welcome to another Knowledge Bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Andrea MacKenzie. If this is your first time joining us, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell and hit that like button. This will be greatly appreciated in helping getting out this content to great leaders and great individuals like yourself. Andrea is the founder with Lead with Harmony. She brings her 20 plus years experience in corporate roles and consulting, from small businesses to Fortune 500s. Please help me welcome Andrea with Hiring for Success. This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
So my name is Andrea MacKenzie. I own a business called Lead with Harmony. And what I do is I help my clients hire, lead, and develop teams for success, for growth, whatever that looks like to them. And also at the same time to create workplace well-being, right? So increasing productivity, decreasing stress, strengthening leadership, all of that falls under that category.
Wow. How did you get into that field?
So my background coming out of B school, I went straight into consulting, and I worked at very large, Fortune 500 companies doing, organizational and operational improvement, a lot of process improvement, a lot of systems implementations, a lot of solution selections, things like that, that sort of corporate world of consulting. And what I realized by being in so many different teams and also being sort of the glue that sort of brings teams together, because you're working with the clients and the consulting teams, and then sometimes you have other vendors, and there's all these people to bring together, is that one of the most important key things is having the right people in the right roles, is having great relationships, is having open communication, all of those things. And so I think it was a natural progression for me to go from thinking about, true numbers and productivity numbers, operational math, that kind of stuff, to wait a minute, there's a whole other piece to this than just looking at, how many of these what's the throughput and what's the, what are the metrics? It's like, who are the people? And it's so much more of a heartfelt thing for me to see people thrive in roles and to see communities building within companies rather than just we go to work, we go home, that kind of thing. So it's where my heart is. As a business owner in particular, your business isn't going to grow unless you build a team. So if you really want to have a business that grows, you're going to start to enlist people, and you need to know how to hire the right people. Hiring is the greatest opportunity any business owner has for growth. And then once you have that team in place, there are things you can tweak and do and realign and so on and so forth. But if you hired right in the first place, right, a great cultural fit, a great fit for the role itself, someone who shares the values that you're envisioning for your people, you have very little to correct later on unless major changes occur. And then in terms of just, if you're not a business owner and you're a leader within an organization, why would you want to work in a team that isn't a great environment every day? We spend half of our waking lives at work, pretty much. So you want to be around great people. You want to see people bringing their best, all of that. It's a better quality of life when you have a nice, good team to work with, right? Yeah.
In your line of work, or some of the things you've seen, what are some of the common mistakes you see companies make when hiring?
Right, being desperate to hire somebody by the time you need to hire them. So I mean, I very much subscribe to that sort of Richard Branson concept that you treat your employees even better than your clients. As you start to think about, what you offer, it's not just what you offer clients, it's what you offer the people that you're going to bring into your business to grow it. And it's the two sides to the same coin, right? You're gonna do almost the same process that you use to qualify a great client.
Yeah.
You're gonna use to qualify a great employee. And I mean, I know there's some people out there who don't spend the time qualifying their clients, and a lot of times they end up in stress and strain and all of these things because they don't have the clients that they love working with. They have a whole bunch of other people they've attracted, right? So honing that is really important. But then at the same time, honing that same type of pipeline that you have from a marketing perspective to your clients to bringing in people that are going to really help your business, take flight.
Yeah. I want to kind of talk about going from that solopreneur to hiring that first individual. And then I want to talk a little bit about building a team, that entrepreneur that's starting out. What are some of the things
Mhm.
they should be thinking about, maybe within the first few months?
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to make a big distinction between is there are some people who are solopreneurs and they're going to go out and they're going to hire different companies or like a VA or a vendor who does their bookkeeping or whatever
Mhm.
those things are. And that's really important stuff. And I don't want to downgrade that. I think it's a really important step, but you don't have the same sort of assess things the
Mhm.
same way when you're hiring a true employee. Okay, so that's I just want to make those two distinctions. However, there are some principles that are the same, and I think is knowing yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know where your passion is, where your expertise is, and where your strengths are. And I mean, I do a lot of different assessments with people to help them understand what I mean by those three things. Like,
Mhm.
what do you actually do best? How do you solve problems? But I'll give you an example of what I mean. So if I am somebody who is not super high attention to detail, like I'm not somebody who's going to read, a 45-page document and be able to see every last detail of everything that's wrong with it, then I
Mhm.
might want to hire somebody to read contracts for me, right?
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing. And it sounds so simple on some level, but it's not as easy as it sounds to
Yeah.
really know yourself. And so even in the case of somebody hiring a VA, you need to be clear on what is your highest priority stuff that you need to get off your plate in order to free up the time and the energy for
Yeah.
you to focus on the things that you do best and that you love to do. Because
Yeah.
most of us get going to business, by the way, because we want to be our own boss. We want
Right.
to do something we love. We
Yeah.
don't want someone else, having control over what we do. And what's so ironic about it is I oftentimes see people being their own worst boss. they,
Mm.
they they
Yeah.
escaped something in corporate and then they realize, oh my gosh, I'm worse to myself than that boss I couldn't stand.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
forcing myself to work weekends. I'm thinking about this and obsess about it all day long, right?
Right.
So as you start to understand what are the things that you need to delegate, what are the things you need to offload,
Yeah.
and spend the time to do it and prioritize those things. That's really how you start to go, all right, this is the first thing that needs to go off my plate. I need to hire a bookkeeper, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? That was one of my first things. I was like, my books are terrible. So yeah, this idea that we force ourselves to wear all of these hats and that it's some sort of proud badge or something, I would get rid of that change that belief immediately, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get you anywhere. And then when you hire somebody and you expect them to do the same thing, they're going to
Mm.
walk away because
Mm.
people can't. There's only certain hats that fit,
Mm.
and
Mm.
they won't sustain it. It's not sustainable. Temporarily, sure, you bootstrap, you get something accomplished, but you have a vision to get those hats that don't fit and you don't like wearing and they look ugly on you or whatever it is.
I
Get
love
them
it.
out
I love it.
immediately,
I
right?
love it.
That's where the dream starts to happen. That's where the vision starts to actually take form.
I love it. Andrea, those are a load of knowledge bombs. Thank you for that because you're really helping us. Because sometimes, we get stuck on this thing and think we have to do all things and think we have to know it all as entrepreneurs and also as leaders. I mean, we can even talk about that, even in leadership. I mean, sometimes it's like the things we don't know, it's like we don't want to tell the team, hey, I don't know this. We feel like as leaders, we should know everything. Another false belief system that I believe we have in our mind. So thank you for dispelling that for us. I want to talk
Sure,
about this, kind
absolutely.
of get a little bit into the hiring process, right? What advice could you give someone that's looking to hire the right person to enhance their team and culture?
Absolutely. So, I mean, well, first of all, knowing yourself is number one, right? Really understanding yourself and knowing what your vision is, right? So
Mm,
how do you hire to a culture if you haven't defined what that culture is?
mm,
And I know that might seem so far
correct,
off in some people's minds as a
correct.
solopreneur or as somebody who's taking the leap, but it's actually something to really think about now, right
Mm,
away, in terms of what your brand is, and then in terms of how you would extend that out to a team, how you would extend that out to your clients, and so on. And to really understand what you stand for, really understand what you don't stand for, what you don't
mm,
tolerate, all of those things.
yeah.
Um, you know, Toxic work cultures are, things that a lot of us have endured. It doesn't mean that it's a rite of passage.
Right.
And that's something that, I think really needs to go away, that the
Mm.
struggle makes you somehow virtuous or something. All of that's just, again, another
Help
mindset,
us.
belief system that doesn't serve anyone, right?
Yes.
So creating that in your environment, and then how do you hire to that? I think there's a couple things. I mean, number one, when you're hiring somebody, make sure you know what you're hiring them for, what the
Mm,
most important things, results are that you're going to be expecting from this person, and
mm,
communicate that.
yeah.
One of the things I hear all the time is, oh, I just need a really smart person and then we'll figure it out. And it's like,
Mm,
no,
yeah.
no. Are you a really smart person? And do you do everything under the sun? No. I
Right.
mean, it's like, know what you're hiring them for, so that there's no bait and switch and there's no confusion as time goes on, what's expected of them.
Yeah.
One of the big things right now where that's happening is, oh, everybody can work from home. It's a work from home thing. And then 3 months later, everybody's coming back into the it's like,
Right,
whoa,
right,
whoa, whoa. Wait a minute. You hired me and said this was work from home. It's
right.
like, know exactly what it is that they're looking for in a culture. Know what, the person you're hiring, know what their values are, all of those kind of things. And yes, there's a lot to creating an interview that gets at that, right? And that really aligns with what your company is all about. I also assess candidates. I always recommend assessing candidates for how they work. Um, I use Colby assessments, and the person who's hiring also assesses what their expectations are. So there's a way to actually match that up before you hire them. So many people I know don't do it prior to hiring, they do it after, and then they call me in to go, now what do I do? And I'm like, well, you got to change the role, or
Yeah.
you have the wrong person, because you
Mm,
just hired somebody who's not a fit for what you wanted. And you could have done that up front, but you waited, and now you got a person that's not a fit. And so I think getting really clear on what the role is, not getting somebody in and then throwing a bunch of other hats at them, right, and making them wear every hat under the sun. That's not going to be sustainable.
yeah.
And then in terms of the team and the culture, know your team, know what's they're struggling with, where they might need some help. If the person's not going to be directly reporting to you, directly supervising the person,
Mhm.
then make sure that other the person who is going to be involved, right? So there's
Yeah.
so many different hiring scenarios that require care and thought.
I love what you said. And you said something I just thought about. I was like, man, I think, really maybe forming or asking the right questions. And so that kind of take me to my next question for you. Is there any like maybe one or two questions that would be great questions to ask in an interview that's probably maybe more, a little neutral and something that that someone can take with them?
I think the big thing is asking open-ended questions, so
Mm,
that you can hear them, so that they can talk, right? So it's like, how would you go about, getting these kinds of results, or how have you in the past? That kind of things. Really
yeah.
understanding their approach to things, and let them talk. Just let them talk about themselves and pick up on things, right? If you can't get somebody to open up in an interview, you're probably not going to get them to open up later on in the work environment. So
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is, we spend a lot of time on resumes. Resumes are so not, it just doesn't tell you enough, right? And I've
Okay.
seen companies at the very top hire based on a resume and have that person come in and like bowl over a culture. So I think, getting into those questions around, like, what's a really great question, understanding that, like, if let's say your value in your business is integrity, like that's one of your top things, or I don't know, respect, or something along those lines. Those are big words, right? Like those, helping them kind of explain and explore how they embody those values. Like you could say, two of our top values are integrity and respect. Can you give me an example of, how this has been something that you've practiced in your daily life, especially for the top echelon of leadership? You want to understand that they're not just coming in and they have a process and they have a way and they have a resume that says they've done all these things. You want to know that they actually are going to come in there and care, if that's the kind of culture that you want to create.
That is a knowledge bomb. And I'm explaining to you why. Listen, Lead to Greatness. This is so important. I'm listening. I'm like, wow, we this is so true. We look at the resume and we basically hire somebody based on their resume, but it's like we don't even know if they fit into the culture. We don't, I mean, a lot of times we don't even see if they line up with the values. I mean, maybe they like to steal, and you talking about integrity. I mean, it's not gonna that they may have a fancy resume, but I mean, well, of course, there's nobody gonna tell you they like to steal. I mean, we ain't gonna do that. But I mean, yeah, it's just so many things. I mean, you really just kind of really hit some nuggets, and I don't want the Lead to Greatness community to miss those. I would say dig a little deeper on it, but you kind of dug at that one. You dug at that one. You dug at the ground. Just tap on the well a little bit, right? I want you to dig a little bit more into that resume aspect versus the culture. If you can just dig at that a little bit more, and let's just see if
Yeah.
we can get some water out of there. It's on
Okay.
you.
I mean, one of the things that I talk about a lot is you want to look at somebody's skills, you want to look at somebody's values or their passion, right? That where their heart is, and then you want to look at somebody's strengths. And when I say strengths, I'm pretty much talking about their innate problem-solving strengths, and that is something I work with people with Colby assessments. I'm a Colby certified consultant to really pick up on that. It's a very objective thing that doesn't change.
Uh,
The other two pieces, skills and values and motivation and all that kind of heartfelt stuff, they're moving targets, right? So when it comes to skills, you can train people. If you got a smart person, you can train them. You need to know what you're willing to train people on, what you're willing to invest in for training, and so on and so forth. But depending on the level of where somebody's coming in at in your business, if it's like entry level, I mean, one of the values they might bring is they want to learn, they might have that edge. And so if you can provide that and you've got somebody who has the strengths and the values of what you need in that role, then don't worry about the resume. It's like that. I think that's a huge thing. And when it comes to how somebody behaves in terms of their cognitive strengths, which is the Colby piece, that might be something to put a little bit more stock into because it won't change over time. And so that's one of the reasons why I highly recommend those things. When it comes to values, motivation, all of that, the only way you're ever really going to get at that is by asking a question and experiencing who this person is. It's not an easy thing to ascertain, right? Some people use, values like core values index or like different assessments to kind of like but it's a lot of times it's from an intellectual perspective. It's not
yeah.
truly what they're practicing on a day to day. A lot of times when I work with entrepreneurs, we do an assessment on values and people know what their values are. And then we actually look at, are they practicing them every day? And they go, oh my gosh, like this one fell off the map for me. I want to go make an asserted effort to now have more of this in my day to day, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's say, for example, and no judgment at all, one of your values is beautiful, being around beauty, right? That might be nature, whatever. And you're like, yeah, my office is just, I don't, right? It's like, put something beautiful, put a vase of flowers in front of you because it's going to make you
Yeah.
feel great,
Yeah.
So, it's really, some people aren't that tuned into what they value. So it's a matter of like getting to how people are practicing the things that you value and the things that you want to be shared values in your culture. Skills, again, yeah, there might be things you need people to hit the ground running and you need to be clear on what those deal breakers are. That's why I say prioritize, prioritize, prioritize when it comes to what you're hiring for in terms of skills and results. But once you get down to those lower priorities, it's like, maybe I could train them on a couple of things, or maybe this goes to somebody else because this person is a really good fit for this organization and can grow. If you want people to stay for a while, they're going to want to grow. They're going to want to
Yeah.
go somewhere. So, yeah.
So Andrea, if you had a choice, would you prefer to hire someone with the skills or someone with the character?
Oh boy. Um, it really depends on the job, right? If I'm gonna go get brain surgery, I want a brain surgeon and I might not care. Right? Like,
Yeah.
so I mean that it really depends on the role. I think, there are some things that require very specific education and skill sets, right?
Yeah.
We talk about rockets, not rocket science, right? A rocket scientist needs to be a
Mhm.
rocket scientist. If
Absolutely.
you can't find a rocket scientist that fits all the checks all the boxes, you might still need to hire the rocket scientist and not
Yeah.
some, right? So there's a lot of nuances to this.
Mm.
But I would say that I've seen people hire less emphasis on skills, but less emphasis on, what school and what GPA, like all that kind of stuff, and more emphasis on who the person is, and make up in spades for what they didn't actually already have in a skill set. So yeah. And let's not forget, soft skills
Yeah.
that you can't necessarily always get in a resume. That stuff is also something to gather in an interview.
Yeah.
I mean, even even having somebody talk about the mistakes they've made and how they've learned from mistakes.
Mm.
You can't be afraid to make mistakes or admit that you've made mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's lots of ways to learn about people.
This is good. You're really helping us, Andrea. This is some definitely good information. I want you to, what are some tips, tools, advice that you can share with the Lead
Yeah.
to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
Yes. Well, first thing, person who's frustrated, they've hired wrong, they had the
Yeah.
revolving door, they had somebody deceitful, and they're like, there's all kinds of stories. You
Mm.
have to let go of those stories.
Mm.
You have to let go. I'm going to say it again. You have to let go of the stories
Help us.
about, because what ends up happening is like, well, I'm never going to find anyone good, or all these, like, okay, that's really toxic. That's not going to get you to hiring somebody. You have to bring the energy into that interview that you're going to hire that person you really, really want. You want to
Yeah.
manifest that person. I'm going to use
Mm.
that word. You're going to manifest that
I
person. And,
agree.
and to that point, what is a tool? What is something we need? We need faith. Okay. And I
Mm.
know that word a lot of times doesn't belong in the workplace.
Go for yes.
Entrepreneurs, I got to tell you, and this is this lesson that I have had to learn myself. You have to believe that it is possible, that
Mm.
the vision that you've created. So number one is having the faith that once you have a vision, you can bring it to fruition. The second thing is to really constantly every day build that vision. I'm going to bring great people who bring their all into this business. I'm going to take the time to hire them right, and they're going to come in and it's going to be a wonderful environment, right? Really believing that,
Yeah.
rather than, every time I have to hire somebody, this is the worst. And then I have to, and it's like more work to hire somebody than it is to just do it myself. I mean, those are the things I hear all the time, right? So, if those are the thoughts that you're going to continue to buy into, and those beliefs you're going to continue to buy into, I can't help you. I mean, you
Mm.
can't help yourself.
Mm.
Right. And it's terrible because that's the hardest work, is changing what you think. That's the number one thing that entrepreneurs need, is to choose the thoughts, and to reposition them
Oh, yeah.
as they build. But it's not. I think a lot of people think, oh, I just need bodies. I just need people to do stuff, and I'm just going to give them stuff. Well, that's, again, if somebody was just going to throw any ball at you, you'd probably drop one of them too, because you're like, I don't know what to do with a
Yeah.
baseball. I know what to do with a basketball, or like whatever that
Mm.
looks like, right?
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
same thing with the hats, right? This hat doesn't fit me. So really, I would say, if you now have a team and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I keep ending up having to pick up the slack. This person is dropping this ball. You have to spend the time to get to know your team a little bit better, right? And things like, what is it they really want? Again, what are their strengths? If you're giving somebody like me 45-page documents to read, because I'm not that super high and like cross every T, dot every I person,
Yeah.
or you're asking me to research something, right? I consider myself a smart person, but that's
Yeah.
not where I might drop the ball on that. And not by not trying. I might just not be able to get it done on time or whatever else. So you need to know who these people are and what they do best so that you can delegate the right things. It becomes very clear. It's like, oh, this is a fit for this person. This is a fit for that person, right? Rather than guessing like, oh, this person has free time, so it's just time for dollars and I'm just going to throw this thing at them. It's just not a good model. So going back to the drawing board, know who you have, know the tasks that need to get done, and start to match people, align people with the things that really work with them. And if for some reason you really don't have the right team, it's for you and for them to let them go. It really is for you and for them to let them go. Well, let's first draw the metaphor to what we're talking about, right? So a ball being a task, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, right? You're giving somebody this task, that task, this task. Okay. So we're talking about task management. And I love task management versus time management. We can manage tasks. We can decide what tasks. We can dole out tasks, right? So going back to one of the very first questions you asked me, you've got to know yourself and what tasks are aligned with you. Okay. And yes, while you might have a big, large, large amount of things that you could do, right? Most entrepreneurs can do a lot of things. Getting really truthful about what is truly a match for you and what you do well. Okay. Once you go through that process and understand that process, which is not something I can necessarily lay out every last detail right now, right? But you go through that process, then you know how to use the same process to match tasks with the people who work for you. Now, if you're just getting started, the benefit is you can hire people to the tasks you need done most, right? But if you've already got a team, now you have to assess who they are and what tasks are going to be aligned with them. Aligned in terms of what they want, what they do, and what they know.
Wow.
Okay. And I know that it might seem more but it's truly just what they want, what they do, and what they know. And there's going to be some degree in each one of those where a task falls. They may know how to do it and do it well, but they don't really want to do it. Right? That could be one thing, right? They could want to do it and have the strengths to do it, but they have to learn something because they don't know how to do it, right? So you start to learn the framework to go, oh, you know what? This person would be really great, but I got to train them on this first. Instead of throwing the ball at them, sink or swim, and then realizing that you didn't give them the training they needed until the ball got dropped.
Andrea, those are a load of knowledge bombs. Man, you're helping us on today. This is awesome. This is awesome. I really enjoyed this interview, learned so much. And I know the Lead to Greatness community is better for this interview. If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah. Well, my website, leadwithharmony.com. You can absolutely connect through there. My email, if you want to just email me directly, Andrea@leadwithharmony.com. I welcome emails. I welcome anybody to reach out. And I'm also on LinkedIn a lot. So @leadwithharmony on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, all of them. But LinkedIn is where I have a newsletter. I kind of get involved a little bit there. So if you're on LinkedIn, connect with me there. And also I have an offer code for all the Lead to Greatness listeners. So my background is in music and audio. So I love visualization audios and meditations and all these kind of things. And so I created this visualization for delegation. So when we talk about getting into that energy of being a master delegator and having great people, that's what this is for. So go to delegationvisualization.com, and to get the audio for free, you just enter the Lead to Great offer code, and that's LEAD, the number 2, and then GREAT, Lead to Great.
Awesome.
And I'll leave that up there for your listeners.
On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you so much for having me, Cedric. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And if this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.